Afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you might be watching this. Another episode for me looking towards the weekend. We've got final declarations in for Saturday now. I'm recording this 11 o'clock on a Thursday. Going to go through the Saturday races, then we'll look at Sunday. So although we haven't got the final decks for Sunday, I'll give you a feeler of where I'm at. I think we pointed out a few good things last week. Had a couple of winners, that's always good, but there's more talking points and things to view within races that will give us clues for the future. So no different today. Decent race at Newbury on the Thursday. Obviously, if I was recording this a little bit later, I could have done a bit of a review of that, but I want to keep this short, sweet, and focused on what it is. So we'll just kick off with Wincanton. There's a few horses that will be definitely worth mentioning here. It's probably worth making a point now that short-term anti-post is really, really risky business, and it can be really lucrative if you play it well, but you are taking a risk and a bit of a punt all the time. Now, there'll be a couple of races that we'll go through here. And admittedly, this is ultimate after timing, but if you'd have asked me beforehand, I could have told you. But there'll be some horses that haven't run, there'll be some horses that are running, that if you'd have played in the markets in the week, you might have had your fingers burnt, or if you'd have played it right, you might get yourself some decent value. So they're the sort of races where I'm not too keen in getting involved at final decks now, and I wasn't too keen in getting involved at the short-term anti-post stage either. But anywho, we're going to crack on. This is the first time I'm looking at a lot of these via the Racing Post. So we've got Novices Hurdle at Wincanton, Flicker Voyou. Obviously, second season Novice Hurdler should be probably going in there. So another winner for Harry Cobden. Wouldn't be one that I'll be looking at from a punting perspective. Small field, expect it to be a short price. That'll be an interesting one, the Memorial Mares Handicap Hurdle, but it is a Mares Handicap Hurdle, so not much more than a watching brief, I think. For that one, the Rising Stars Novices Chase. So this will be one that's worth touching on. The short-term anti-post, if the cap fits, was entered up here. So looked like he was probably going to come here because it's a novices grade 2, but he's also entered in an intermediate chase on Sunday at Sandown. We'll come on to that a little bit later on, but he gets all the weight concessions in there because of the time frame, the fact that he's a novice now, and lots of horses that go in there were novices last season. So a few fingers might have been burnt, but Grand Sancy would have been a good bet in the week. You can see the field, the way that it's finished up. He should be winning this. He'll be short, but it's a race to watch anyway. We're not going to learn a lot, but it's just nice to watch horses like that jump. And again, Grand Sancy, I mentioned it with Flicker Voyou. Grand Sancy's technically a second season novice as well, so that helps him. Elite Hurdle, I think lots of people would have realised that Goshen probably wasn't going to run here with the ground going quick. So Royal would have been put up by a few people, and rightly so. It's good this year, this race. I know it's a grade 2 and some people look down on it because of the previous winners or especially the field that might be in this year, but I think it's fairly good, to be honest. We're talking grade 2, so having horses that are in the 150s or borderline is probably about right. And it looks fairly competitive. I mean, Master Debonair, I probably want slower ground, I'd have thought. I could be wrong with that, but he might want a little bit further in time as well. But, I mean, he's still a nice horse. Colin Tizard Yards, I'm still not 100% sure they've started to fire yet, but good stepping stone for him, and this is the sort of race that you'd expect him to come in. Solo, obviously didn't run so well at Cheltenham, achieved a high rating off the back of pretty much one performance at Kempton in the Adonis, but that was a pretty decent performance as far as I'm concerned, so I'm happy to draw a line through the run after. Be really interested to see what he does, and another one where we always say whatever they do over hurdles is a bonus. He's all about chasing. So Royal, like I mentioned on already, he's probably the one that they've all got to beat. He's got previous round here, ground will suit, so he's going to be the right favourite. I wouldn't particularly be looking to take him on, but it would be a race I'd be happy to, well, I will be anyway, be happy to watch, and also see if we can get some clues for going forward. The Badger Beer Silver Trophy, wouldn't normally be mentioning too much about the handicap races, but Danny Whizbang's in there. Obviously fancy him for the Ladbroke Trophy if he ended up going there. I do think that he's capable of winning off of this sort of mark. This race, to be fair to it, probably will suit him quite well. The only thing I would worry about with him is the ground. So again, the short-term anti-post part of it, he was about 6 to 1, 13 to 2 for the race in the week. That wouldn't have been anything sort of a price to lure me in, especially given the fact he had an entry in that intermediate chase on Sunday at Sandown. But Harry Cobden's on, he's had the wind up. I still feel a bit like he could go really well in a Hennessy. And if I think he could go well in a Hennessy, then surely he's got to have a proper chance in here. I mean, not really a lot more I can say about it. It wouldn't be a race I go into great depth with in terms of the rest of the field, but yeah, Danny Whizbang will be interesting. He will now get a bet from me because we're into the final declaration stage, so it will be money back if he doesn't run. I am worried about the ground for him. I don't think he wants it quite this quick, but I think he probably handles most. Had the wind up since last season as well, so that's always a plus. He's probably still going to be around about the same sort of price, so say 5-6 to 1. I'd be happy to have a little go on him, but with the caveat that I'm more backing him now, just thinking he's going to win a handicap chase at some point. This wouldn't be a hefty bet in there. I think price-wise, to be honest with you, it's not even massive value, the price that he would be. But I think he's worth a poke anyway, and it's probably, again, more the fact that he's on my watch list. I fancy him for the Hennessy. If he went and bombed up in a handicap like this, I'd be a bit miffed at myself if I wasn't on. So, smaller stake bet for in here, and then we're already on for the Hennessy. His price has shortened up a bit there, so fingers crossed he comes out of this well and does still go to Newbury for that. But again, it's a great race to watch. My Way's a really interesting one. Young horse. They've fought a lot of this horse for a while. Hasn't really been shown a lot, but seemed to turn a bit of a corner when it won the last day. Jockey bookings obviously suggest that it's not the stable's first or second string, but given the fact that he's the age, he might turn into a Badger Beers or a Badger Ales horse in the future. So again, worth watching horses like that in races like this. The bumper, haven't gone through this in any depth up to now. Just skimming through the names in here, like the obvious ones would be the ones that we want to look into a little bit further, but none of them in terms of actual names scream out to me. It's ones I'd fancy. Interest in the Earth bunch that are in there. Guessing, I mean, those silks are slightly different, but they're opposing, aren't they? They'll be interesting ones to look at. Look, I'll do a write-up for this one. I'm not going to go into depth of it now. The sort of things that I would be looking at for these horses, though, just so you get a feel of it, is jump in, and we're going to start looking at breeding perspectives. So the first thing we'll just go and have a look at is the dam to see if this is closely related to anything. When they're not, and there's nothing really to look at in there, or even if there is and it's just not much to go by, just tend to look at the grand dam to see how they're related. Doesn't scream out worldies in there, and then you want to look at sort of the wins, not necessarily the percentages, they do help a bit, but you just want to see if there's winners in the family. So we saw the owner there. These silks are slightly different. Maybe it's a family thing that's going on here, but we're only going to skim through a couple of them. But again, these are the sort of things that I'll have just a quick skim at with some of these, just to get a bit of a vibe on the breeding. I am a sucker for breeding when it comes to these bumper horses. Typically, I'll have seen them in advance, so they'll be on my sort of radar already. For the fact of I want to watch them when they run in their bumpers. But yeah, I'd skim through a few of these. Harry Fry's would have a look at. To be honest with you, I might as well have a quick look now while we're doing it. It shouldn't take too long. We won't do this for all of the bumperage, but I will go back through as well when we get prices up or get a little bit nearer to the time. But again, we can look for breeding side of it, and there's not a great deal to go on most of these in here. It is a quick ground bumper as well with the forecast in the ground, so you wouldn't suspect many trainers are going to run their better bumper horses on this type of ground, unless obviously they want it. We'll have a look at the Nichols horse because you'd suspect they'd have something direct in the family. So yeah, get a river for Dan Skelton, fair enough. And the good thing with these is you can see they've won races, so again, don't worry so much about the percentages. And we can see that they're winning around about 2 mileage. It's always good when you can recognise a name. So it's no surprise, is it? A Nichols horse in a bumper at Wincanton, local track where he mops up, is probably going to be the most fancied one. Even going a little bit further into the Grand Dam side of it, so to see like uncles, aunties, bits and pieces like that. We've got bits of winners in there, but wouldn't look anything too exciting. And again, I've only gone through a couple of them. We can look through. There's a few that have raced in there as well, but yeah, wouldn't scream out monster bumper there. But Saturdays are pretty decent cards at Aintree as well. We're really exciting for this weekend because it starts to ramp up. But then next weekend we've got 3-day November meeting at Cheltenham. We've got Morgiana over at Ireland. There's some decent novices over there, so it just really, really does ramp up. This is sort of the appetizer. I'd class this as the last sort of weaker weekend for when it all starts to kick off. Novices hurdle over at Aintree. Good races to watch, especially when you've got horses that have won a novice hurdle and then they're carrying a penalty to see if they can do that. Obviously, Soaring Glory will be attempting to do that today at Newbury. Should be well up to that. And then I'll just be interested in some of the horses that are entered, where they're going. That North of the Wall, I'm sure that ran with William Marshall on last time. I don't really get too stuck into the handicaps, to be honest with you, and I feel like you've got to find your own little niche. I prefer to be graded snob, and then if you start looking into these races a bit too much, you can sometimes find a bet for no reason. There'll be bits of form lines coming in for this one, I think, north of the wall today. Morning Vicar fancied at Newbury, and I know north of the wall's well beaten there, but okay, we won't say too much more about that. It wouldn't be a race that I'd particularly be looking at, but he's just a name that from previous jumps up a little bit. Patemp's qualifier race. There is one today in Patemp's that I kind of half liked. Dolphin Square for Dickie Johnson. It's mainly the angle, the fact that David Maxwell's out injured at the moment, and I fancy that any jockey that is better than David Maxwell, no offence to him, and Richard Johnson being a professional top, champion jockey, fancy that Dolphin Square a bit today. In these races, obviously, a lot of it's about being qualified. You know what I mean? Harry there carrying the top weight will do a favour to so many other runners in here. Portrush Ted fell last year when he would have qualified. He's interesting because I think they'll get him qualified for the Patemp's here. They'll probably send him over fences, and then they've got this as a fallback for it. So I'd expect Portrush Ted to be there or thereabouts. He went fresh. He went well fresh last year and won. Not 100% sure what what mark he's now. I don't know if they did anything after the fall, because I know he went up after his first win. I think he was 127, and I put him in my horses to follow last year as just an absolute handicap blot. No, 131 he was. He might have been, was he out of the hat? No. 131 anyway. So he was up £7, and then they put him up £1 for the fall there, because he would have placed. He wasn't in for winning, but he would have placed. Better ground will suit him. Can win off of this mark for sure. Portrush Ted will be interesting, and to be honest with you, although it's a qualification race, you never want to be getting too excited about it. I will have another look back at this race after, but Portrush Ted would definitely be on the shortlist. Like I say, he went well fresh. I still think he's better than 139, to be honest. He might not have as much up his sleeve as others, but we're looking at the horses like Fager that used to be with Gordon Elliott. We're looking at a lot of older horses. Most of these would have proved their bits. It's these 6-year-olds that maybe deserve a second look in there. But yeah, Portrush Ted's probably going to be a bet, to be honest, at the weekend. If he's, again, I'd need to go into the race with a bit more depth, but I don't know, 5 to 1-ish plus. Mahayed's an interesting one because it's starting to drop down in the weights and actually ran okay. That race was at the Cheltenham October meeting, I believe. Wait for it to load up. This is all good with the live, isn't it? Oh no. Aintree, went back to in the October meeting. So he's had a spin round here, and then it's coming back for another spin round here. Down another £1. It's remnants of starting to get back into racing, isn't it? And we know that it won a county hurdle. For 139, it's in and around that mark. Mohayed's starting to get a bit interesting, really, isn't it? But you'd possibly think qualification Patemp's going working their way back, but trip and all those bits and pieces, don't know. Soft ground at Aintree, so something different to think about compared to Wincanton. Yeah, Portrush Ted would be one that would be interesting. Probably could be looking at him as a play. We'll swerve that next handicap. 2.5 mile hurdle, so this is quite a nice little race. I think we find the comment gets referred to quite a lot for horses as being triplets. Now, what I tend to find with the triplets horses is they're just shy of being top grade, and we blame the trip as the reason for it. Lots of these horses can be fairly competitive at 2 miles or 3 miles, but they get forced into the middle distance because that's the way that it goes. They're either just not fast enough or they're just not out and out stayers. This is a good looking race as well. So we look at the elite hurdle, grade 2-ish. We're talking 150s horses. Technically, on the average ratings of the field, this is actually a better race. Somerville Boy, the middle trip looks ideal for him. Thomas Darby, I mean, he hasn't been terrible since the Supreme, but hasn't necessarily shown as much. I mean, the same could be said for Somerville Boy, couldn't it? Actual Supreme winner. But these are the sorts of horses we're talking about. They maybe haven't gone on to the heights they could have done. Cool, my lord, likes it round here. Don't know if it's won here. Don't think Ascot would have had the course bit in there, wouldn't it? I'm thinking Ascot. Bit of a middling fair one. I think I've got him confused with Top Notch, to be honest, what I've said about Aintree, because Top Notch came over hurdles, didn't he? And I think he might have won this race last year or similar. Again, maybe triplish-ish. We obviously won the international hurdle at Cheltenham, put himself into the champion hurdle mix with that. He could be interested in there, but again, it's a fiddly looking race. You could make a case for a few of them. You'd cheat a bellow on those terms. Fresh from a wind up, 155, getting weight from the field, probably deserves to be favourite. you don't want to overcomplicate things, I suppose. But yeah, wouldn't necessarily be a race I'd be wanting to bet in. I'd maybe look at it to see what they chalk up Cheetah Bello for first show, because I suspect he deserves to be short. Um, and then that's a poor looking bumper as well with such a small amount of field. So yeah, we'd leave the majority of Aintree there, and then we'll go and have a look, see where else. There's some racing at Kelso, it's okay, and then we can have a little look if there's anything exciting over in Ireland before we move on to Sunday. Again, starting off with another novice hurdle. It's interesting with this Lord de Mesnil, because he's entered in the Betfair Chase, still 0 from 10 over hurdles, I believe. See if I can get this one right, unlike Cormalord and bloody course form. But yeah, Lord de Mesnil, like a decent enough horse. It's got to be some sort of prep run for the Betfair Chase, if that's where they're thinking of going. But yeah, you'd think a 143 rated chaser, albeit the fact that he's not won over hurdles, would take all the beating in a race such as this. We just, unfortunately, sorry, it's a bit slow in it. We just wait for it to load up. But yeah, 0 from 10. Yeah, 153 rated over fences. Second in the 4-miler. Jeez. I mean, he should be short in that, shouldn't he? Definitely like worth keeping an eye anyway to see what the prices open up at. Like, he should be odds on, despite the fact that he doesn't seem to be doing it so much over hurdles, and it clearly is a prep run. But yeah, in terms of class, he's miles ahead. It wouldn't, again, maybe the sort of race where I wouldn't be keen to be getting like too excited about it. But if you could get a price on that, I'd say anything odds against would be backable. Semi-interesting. Anything else up there? Normally the Northern Circuit, I don't mean any offence by it, but we're not going to be getting any worldies up there. Occasionally we do get some half-decent races, but yeah, I mean, other than that, wouldn't be a whole lot. Thinking in the bumper as well. Yeah, poor weekend for bumpers, but we've got 2 decent divisions at Newbury today, and then again we've got some big meetings coming up next weekend, so we have a lot more stuff. Don't know why we're looking at Nace for, it's flat tracking it. So we've gone through Saturdays. As I say, it's an interesting enough weekend because there's some okay horses and there might be some form lines for going forward. The ground's killed a lot of the racing at Wincanton because it is good ground, but we'll kick off with Ireland over on the Sunday to go through there, because you can see we've got quite a few graded races. Now, at this point, we're doing this on the Thursday, so we haven't got the final declarations. I'll give you the same sort of feel as I've done for the Saturday, the sort of things that I'm looking at. Maiden hurdle for this, the main thing I'm going skimming down for is names of horses that I know need to be on the shortlist and horses that I'm interested in. Grange Clare Native was due to run against Farouk Delan, withdrew pretty much on the day in the morning. I can't remember exactly why it was withdrawn, but you can find that stuff out. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Wide receiver as well for Gordon Elliott. So again, it's going to be those couple of Gigginstown ones. This Holy Macapony, Barry Maloney owned, would be an interesting runner if it came in here as well. Obviously, with these sorts of races, we need final fields. And then there's another Gordon Elliott one in here, isn't there? Fiston Dizizards. I'm not sure his point was that great, but we need to see final fields. But again, yeah, that's a sort of race. There's a handful of horses in there that could be above average, so decent. The For Auction Novice Hurdle, Grade 3, so again you see the level of it, but Esky Lane would be really interesting if for Gordon Elliott. I like this horse. I think he's probably a bit too classy for an Albert Bartlett. This is a 2-mile race, but I do think that he's a stamina horse. So I'll be interested if he came in a watching brief, because I probably want to take him on. Yeah, wide receiver, another one for Elliott. We mentioned that was in the novices hurdle at the beginning. That's over 2.5. I think wide receiver possibly wants a bit further as well. Yeah, interesting. I wouldn't think Ballyadam's going to come here after running last week. And Golo for Willie Mullins would be interesting. Again, it's the big obvious names. We need to see the final field for that, but Grade 3 nonetheless. Esky Lane, like I say, I'd probably be thinking of taking him on. It depends on the depth of the field, but I think he'll be better over further. The Liz Mullen Hurdle, Grade 2, 2-mile 4. Now, Fury Road, we know, ran really well in the Albert Bartlett. Staying over hurdles this season because Gigginstown have got so many novice chasers as it is anyway, especially staying novice chasers. So you'd think this would be the place for Fury Road to kick off. Cracking Smart, he was one that took his time to go over fences, so they held him back for a stairs hurdle tilt, and that didn't quite work out. Ronald Pump obviously ran so well in the actual stairs hurdle. Super Sunday, everyone talks about this being his ideal trip, the 2.5. 6 shooter, my boys in there. pretty decent enough looking race. I mean, it is a Grade 2, so you'd expect nothing less. But yeah, even Cider Burdo being in there, maybe they're going to try and make him into a stay as hurdler. So that'll be a really interesting race to see final decks. Obviously, Gordon Elliott's got plenty. Even Tiger Roll's got a little notch in there too. The Fortria Chase Grade 2. This will be interesting because of a blue tard more than anything. Class should prevail for him in here. Obviously, he has to give weight away to plenty of other horses within the field. Not 100% sure what his reappearance record is. I know I took him on last year when Balyoshin was a good thing and he got beat. Yeah, maybe not read too much into it, but I don't know. It's that race there, isn't it, when he beat Chacon Poursoir that made him look a bit too mile-ish, and then I don't think he is a two-miler. Interesting anyway, but he's probably the one that's going to take all the beating. Again, that'll be watching brief. Wouldn't want to take him on, but wouldn't want to be backing him because he'll likely be short prices. Anyway, Troy Town Handicap Chase, minefield. I wouldn't be of any use in this probably. Plan of attack on names jumps out slightly, but yeah, it wouldn't be a race I want to get particularly stuck into. Beginner's Chase, hopefully we've got something interesting in here. Deloro, very, very lightly raced. That was bought by JP McManus. Basically after its first rule start, and then it's flopped since. So unfortunate for him, obviously very injury prone. Easy work on my horses to follow list. Would be fantastic to see him kick off, and you probably hope that he would, to be fair. Trips 2 mile 1 wouldn't be my idea of where I'd see him ending up. I think he'll be a stayer, but I do think he's good for sort of middle-ish distance as well. I think he probably could be a marsh horse, but obviously they've got Envoy for that. Midnight Run, I liked him for Joseph O'Brien. I thought he was Albert Bartlett-ish profile last year. Again, didn't particularly work out. This could turn into a half-decent chase, but if we take a couple of those names that I've mentioned out there, it turns into a fairly ordinary one. So we'll see how that one turns out. I wouldn't be interested in that. Again, another handicap hurdle, and then that's Ireland done for the Sunday. So yeah, there's plenty of interest on Sunday in Ireland, and that's the thing. Sunday in Ireland is their big race day, as I tend to find, and as the weekends crack on, we just get so much more decent racing. Next weekend's monster. Even next week, Monday's got some decent racing. Tuesday's not a bad fixture list either, and then obviously Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be a big week next week, but we're obviously looking here. So we've moved over to Sandown. This is where that intermediate chase is that Santini, won last year, and he just beat Now McGinty. They're the types of horses that are going there. Kilteely Briggs, he'll be really interesting now he's chasing, and I like novice chasers making their debuts in these handicap chases. It sort of screams out to me that they're potentially well handicapped, and I do think this horse is better than 136. There's quite a few form lines that suggest that he's well worthy of 136 anyway. We'll see if he actually gets in here. He was entered up for Newbury as well. There'll be a few other interesting ones, like Morning Vickers running at Newbury, again, unless they pull him out because of the ground. But yeah, a few interesting potential ones, and they're remastered. I think he must have something wrong with his breathing. Severano was offered loads of promise, didn't really deliver it. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Kilteely Briggs shortlist for that one, the 115 at Sandown. Although the slight caveat with that is I'm not sure he is a boat, but he looks like a bit of a boat, and I don't think Sandown suits boats, hence how Santini ran last year. Maiden hurdle there, Adrimall's got a booking on. Adrimall, although he flopped last time out, and Tom Lacey still isn't really in any major bits of form, would be really interesting if he does actually come to Sandown. No Risk to Flow and Dusart are running at Newbury today, so you wouldn't see them here. Lord of Kerak was okay-ish in his bumper pick up from that. Severance is entered here. That's entered in a couple of races. Shake 'em Up Harry was behind, I think it was Shiskin, wasn't it, at Newbury. So, there's lots of potential. He's ended up in quite a few races, Shake 'em Up Harry, so I think he's going to be seen. Obviously, it's ground dependent. Your Darling, going over hurdles again. I mean, that looks a fairly steady novices hurdle, so have a little poke at that. Again, it's going to depend on final decks. Future Stars Intermediate Chase. So again, the short-term anti-post was talk about if the cat fits. Look at him in here. Just because of the realms of where you had to win it and the penalties for after 2019, depending on the graded status of it. Because this is a listed race, they're only really looking at the graded ones. He just won an ordinary race. Chili Fiddy runs today I think it runs today. Yeah, it runs today. So that's probably not going to be in here. So if the cat fit's getting weight from the entire field, 162, and he hacked up last week. Danny Whizbang's going in the Badger Bills, we've already said that. It's just ridiculous. Hacks up. A couple of grand less race, but he'll be qualified for this race or eligible for this race next year. I think as well, right-handed, 3 miles, screams out Felton, doesn't it? Keltone Star, Novices Chase. So he won't be a betting proposition on Sunday because he'll be too short, but you'll be interested to see if you can get some specials on him to win that. And then for the Kelso Star Novices Chase, I think he's about 5 or 6 to 1 shot with William Hill, which isn't monster value, but if you can get him at a short price there and you can get 10 to 1 plus for him to do the double there in the Feltham on Boxing Day, I'd be suggesting that might be the way to play it. So if anyone wants to request that for somewhere other than Hills, because I can't get on with them anymore, then good on you. Handicap hurdle. I was at Fraser Island, the name he ran at Newbury, didn't he, under a big reputation, but yeah, wouldn't be interested in that race particularly. Veterans Chase, never going to really attract me in, to be honest. And then Bumper. This should potentially be a bit of a better bumper. Bow to Greatness runs today at Newbury. That's interesting as well because Pauline's wife is involved, or daughter, I think, and Harry Redknapp. Fleming's Tide was mentioned by Paul Nicholls recently. That seems to be showing a bit now, and he thinks that's, given the fact that it's a 5-year-old, is going to be fairly decent this season. Probably a bit more forward than some of the others might be. So if Fleming's Tide runs this Sunday, that would be potential punting. I'd need to obviously see the final declarations. So a few of these are running at Newbury, but yeah, that's the biggest one that jumps out to me. That Fleming's Tide would be one to be really interested in that bumper. I'm not saying it's going to win, but hey ho. Right, we're going to swerve over to Foss last because they've got some deep ground there, so we might have some more interesting entries there than we might get this time of year. Walton Novices Hurdle. Freddie Darling. I know some people that are involved in that horse. That's good to see that back at 2 miles. Could be a tough race though. Danehill Cody out there. That's 110 rated on the flat that runs at Newbury. What else have we got in here? Lord de Mesnil, we've seen that's running Severance again. So that's got plenty of entries. Shake 'em Up Harry. Truckers Pass even, that's got some fair bumper form. It's got too many 2s next to it, so it's a bit of a worry, but To Be Sure's not even a bad pony. So yeah, that could be an okay race as well. Again, depending on final decks. Beginner's Chase, now this looks quite nice. The numbers we're looking at for horses that are in here. Keldestan, Mac the Man probably is even better than the 130. He's still got more to come. Highway 102, 146 already. Trotterdown, 141. Zanza, 138. Hitman, 141. Now Hitman for Paul Nicholls is French export, only a 4-year-old. It's already running a graded race over fences in France. No, tell a lie. That was the one that's running at Newbury today, or had an entry for Newbury today. But it's a 4-year-old. They're looking to stick it in a beginner's chase. This is very early on in a horse's career, but obviously it's bought to go over fences. We know that's what Nicholls does with the majority of his horses. Now Frodon was a similar one in that sort of mould, where very early on they put him over fences, so you don't often get 4-year-olds chasing this early on. But he's a notable entry. I don't know whether he was in more than one. He might have been one yesterday as well, but he's not declared. But yeah, Hitman, when he makes an appearance, will be decent. Whether he can live up to that number or not, it's open to debate. But this looks a fairly steady beginner's chase. So regardless of a betting opportunity, it's a race to definitely be watching, especially when we're getting 2-milers on slower ground. Suggests that if something goes and shows some speed there, that they've got a lot of speed, and it can also suit some stayers, which will give us clues for later on as well. Maiden Hurdle here, but Barbados Bucks probably does need to step up a bit what we've seen so far. Switch Hitter again would need to show a lot more than it did the first day. Your Darling's got that entry again, slower ground. You'd think this might look an easier option. This might be where he comes, but again, interesting enough. A bit of Foss on a Sunday. And we're not really going to be interested in the handicap stuff. There might be some bits, who knows, conditional jockeys to finish up. Don't care about that. And then we'll have the final look at Stratford. Now, Stratford's going to be pish, I think, but... Oh, it's gone. So, no need to worry about that. So there's a few bits and pieces that are in there. I'm just going to... I know it's one for the weekend, and we're looking at, but I'm just going to quickly give you a feel for Monday. And anyone that's been watching it for this period of time, you can get a Brucey bonus bit. So some fair racing. Now Chepstow's the interesting one. Right, there's a horse, See Lot More Business, ergo named here. Related to See More Business, was bought for like 40,000 as a 3-year-old store. I love the store sales. Something like this is the sort of horse where I feel like, I could get a squad together, we could buy a horse like this. Did you see store sales like that Narista Flow for Ollie Murphy that go for a couple of 100,000 because they're well bred? This is very well bred. Got picked up for a fraction of the price you take a bit of a pump with the store sales because you need to see the size of them. Maybe it wasn't a good look or something, but I was so impressed with this See Lot More Business in its bumper under Bryony Frost. Like, I wasn't expecting it to win, and it won comfortable. So the Stewart family have sponsored the whole day at Chepstow. They're going to have a couple of runners in there, but just for future reference, Paul Nicholls says See Lot More Business, future champion, and then conditional jockeys, handicap chases the type. So potentially going to be a really nice type. That is entered up in the 2 mile race to begin with. Now, I'd think it's more of a, especially the fact that it's related to a Gold Cup winner, would be more of like a Ballymore Albert Bartlett type. And we know that Nicholls does a lot better with his chases. We've just said that with the French horse Hitman, but they're going to have a few entries there. I'll do a separate piece for the Chepstow stuff. I'll get that written over the weekend and posted on the page in written terms, but just worth noting stuff like that, those little comments, and they'll stick in the back of your mind for a long time. I'm not saying that this horse is going to go and win a Supreme or anything this year, but potentially they're talking about this. They've obviously picked one of their horses and just maybe put the pressure on Paul Nicholls. It could be a bit tongue-in-cheek, but worth noting anyway. But yeah, there's some nice entries there, especially the first couple of races, first few. We're still looking like 0 to 100s, 0 to 130s, but yeah, there's a couple of interesting runners for the sponsors of that card. So be lucky for the weekend. I wouldn't go get too excited about too much stuff. Like I say, we will be back in Danny Whizbang, but more for the fact that I don't want to miss him going in on a race. Still hoping Hennessy's the target for him. Next weekend's monster racing as well, so there'll be loads of opportunities. There's a couple that I've mentioned in here, bumper horses and Murden hurdlers, that if we get the right sort of price, we might have a little bit of a go on. But it'll be a fairly quiet weekend, but it's massively going to be ramping up. Today's racing at Newbury for Thursday. Obviously, if you managed to watch this beforehand, you should be watching Newbury. If you're watching this after, then go back and have a look at some of the results or see if there's any comments that have been made about performances. I can answer any questions that people might have, because that'll be a very informative meeting. But before we know it, we're only a few weeks away from the Ladbroke Trophy. Then there'll be the Tingle Creek. Then it's just all ramping up at the minute. So steady this weekend is what my advice would be, and then the big dogs will be coming out very, very soon. So thanks again for your guys' support. Any questions, comments, appreciate all of that sort of stuff. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the page. Thank you.